Finance professionals are the foundation of every company. They need to be in touch with current issues and be experts in adapting their organizations to future challenges. It's not about crunching the numbers. It's about seeing the road ahead. The Certified Management Accountant, or CMA, is a globally respected certification that proves your mastery of the 12 core practice areas in management accounting. Earn it and take your place at the leadership table at the world's best companies. Foresee trends through the use of technology and analytics. Be responsible and sustainable through professional ethics and standards. Add value to your career and become a financial leader of the future.
Good, thank you for that, Bernardine. So I think we can get started. Hello and welcome on behalf of the Ima Switzerland Chapter to this joint IMA and ICV member event on agility and resilience in finance.
And welcome from our side, from the International Association of Controllers, so ICV, and that's really mean International Controllerverein. So we are really, let me say, originated in Germany, and so welcome from our side.
Very good. I'm Marco Otti, board member of the IMA Switzerland Chapter, and will be your moderator this afternoon, together with IMA and chapter member Marion Hafliger. Hello, Marion.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
And also, you already heard ICV member Christian Baumgartner, who organizes the Controller Working Group for Northwestern Switzerland. Hello again, Chris.
Hi.
And also Astrid Stör, who is part of the Swiss ICV Northwestern Working Group.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Astrid.
Happy Friday afternoon.
So we started with the organization of this event almost exactly a year ago, actually, and chose the topic agility and resilience at that time. And without knowing, of course, how its relevance would literally skyrocket, I think we can say that here this year. So Chris, would you like to share a bit more on our theme today?
Yeah, so we have thought about organize an experience exchange and give you some more insights into the topics of agility and resilience. And really before Corona was really starting, then it's already long ago, but so in Feb, March. And I would say that agility is something that is really rising since many years. So since 5, 7, 8 years, you hear more and more about that. And that's really because of the really fastening market changes, the pressure by the globalization, really be more adaptive to the requirements of the customers, and because competition is growing because of globalization. And you also see that coming more from the Silicon Valley style businesses, like the Googles and Amazons and so on. And now many companies try really to adapt to this way of working, to be more agile, to lean their organization, to react faster. And there are many companies that really experiment with that way of working. I think it started, so I've seen it in IT a lot, so in early times, so with Scrum and things like that. Maybe Marie-Louise will also a little bit talk about this from where it started. And but we also have one experience, storytelling by Anna of her journey in Roche then about it, more from the business side, not so much IT. Then with the resilience topic, I think it's really linked heavily to the agility topic, because you really see with this pressure on changing fast, and also job profiles changing, requirements to the people changing, be more adaptive. There is a lot of pressure to the people, changing their role, their environments, and this is really hard sometimes to take, and also because pressure by let me say requirements of by the competition, by the market, and now on top you have that pandemic with Corona, and even makes it harder. So one example I know there from with a customer I'm working with, that's a Japanese pharmaceutical company. They have today, that's really today, they have a me day, and so me day means no meetings, just you can work for yourself. And so that's really hard then when the pressure is high in the business and you just can do video conferences, cannot meet the people really physically, no real break between the meetings. And so resilience is really something we also need to talk about. So what you can do to be more resilient.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Together with Marion, I will say a few words about our agenda for today's event on agility and resilience in finance. You heard already some pointers from Chris. As you can see, based on the sessions, we will also move from the agility to the resilience topic wise and end with a networking in breakout rooms. But you don't have to wait until the end to participate. So you can use the chat function to submit your questions and comments during the event. And most sessions will also allow for time for Q&A, and therefore we encourage you to be active as well. Our first speaker will be Marie-Louise Lehmann, founder of Finance Goes Agile, who will show us what agility means and how accounting and finance professionals can reinvent themselves to become true business partners. Then Anna Grafström from Roche will share her learnings of a teal transformation journey in a multinational company. If you have read the book named Reinventing Organizations, then you are already familiar with the term teal organization. And after a break, we will hear from Professor Dr. Utz Schäfer from WHU Business School, as he introduces 4 levers for building a truly resilient finance function. So who do we have next, Marion?
After we close with 3 speakers from J&J, so we start with Gillian Chill, who will talk about resilience at work. Actually, she told me directly that she believes it's especially important for finance professionals, as we sometimes forget a bit the balance in life. So she will tell us how what we can do ourselves to get more resilient. Then after a break, we will have Mary Walsh and Ken Sabatino talking about how to build supply chain partnership at Janssen. So we have 3 speakers. That's really about sharing some key elements on how to have a resilient supply chain in Janssen to win really the race to market. With these 3 speakers, we will close. After that, we will go into the closing remarks and have our networking breakout, as Marco was already talking about. So why maybe J&J? You may not know, but J&J and IMA have a long history. So within J&J, we are really focusing on getting our professionals certificated with the CMA, the Certified Management Accountant. And actually the Swiss chapter was founded by 2 J&J professionals that moved to Switzerland, David Bancroft and Christian Kusik. And so far all presidents had J&J backgrounds. However, currently there is no active J&J representee on the board. So if you're interested, whether J&J or not, let us know. They would happily welcome somebody again. However, in J&J, we don't only have IMA members, we also have ICV members. So I'm happy to hand over to my colleague Astrid Stier.
Thank you, Marion. So just a couple of things about the ICV, International Controller Association. It was founded, okay, that's the slide for J&J, and I do this first. So why is J&J as a host in Switzerland so interesting? when the Ima and Marion thought about hosting an event at a J&J premises, and Chris and I, we have been speaking for years about we should do an event at J&J. So why is event so interesting? Well, let's have a look at the fact slides and the fact. Controllers love facts. Facts speak for themselves. We have more than 4,000 employees in Switzerland, right? 4,300. And more than 200 out of that are finance professionals, right? Finance talents, as we used to call up. We have talents. And that's a pretty decent group, right? We have more than 10 cantons representation at 11 sites, 24 legal entities, and all of you guys who are here from J&J know the MRC legal entity participant structure. So there's a lot of complexity around, a lot of things going on. Manufacturing sites, 4 left after the J-Bill transition. We have all 3 sectors from J&J represented in Switzerland: farm, medical device, and consumer health. We have almost 1 billion of investment of J&J in Switzerland, right? You see here the FX 100 and 0.7, so almost 1 billion investment in Switzerland, and 2 billion payments to suppliers. And also J&J contributes to the philanthropic activities in Switzerland quite a bit. So all this makes J&J interesting and hot for having an event. And as you heard from our colleagues on the organization committee, we have been meeting for more than a year. And originally we thought to have this at site. And let me share with you. So here we thought, we wanted to have an network apero afterwards at the a little place in Solothurn. Unfortunately, this is not gonna work, right? Corona kind of sabotaged this, but we are so happy that we can share with you those interesting facts and speakers today. 3 things about International Controller Association, founded in 1975, represented in more than 29 countries. ICV is a founding member of the International Group of Controlling, so there are other activities also and correlated. There is a cooperation as well for, we call it Controller Academy, right? That's where we build talents and we educate talents. The ICV, International Controller Association, hosts controller congresses, so the largest congress with 600 to 800 people in the past, before Corona again, and a lot of congresses in all those 29 countries. So we have 60 work groups. One work group, Marie-Louise will share with you later on something about agility, right? So are there 59 more? We have 17 expert groups, and we have a think tank, what we call Dream Factory. So there's a lot of things going on, and if you are not yet a member of the ICV, please feel free to reach out and maybe consider. So having all that, I would like to hand over to Chris for kicking it off with the event.
Oh yeah, so let me introduce Marie-Louise to you. So as you heard from Astrid, she is leading the working group Agile Controlling, one of the 60 we have. This working group, this is really a way in our association to, let me say, gain knowledge in new topics, new subject matters that are relevant for controlling. Also providing white papers, meeting for experience exchange, and everybody that is invited to be part of the ICV and also be part of these working groups we have. And so Marie-Louise was really available, so I'm really happy that she can speak to us about the topic and what the working group is doing there. Marie has worked for more than 10 years in the area of operations controlling, also at this time more than 6 years in a leadership role. And you told me when we talked about the topic, so that you really have learned that the people are really eager to learn more about Agile. You made a lot of experience there in your practical work. And so then you decided to work as a consultant, founding your own company. And so with your background also being a certified Scrum Master and a product owner, you are now consulting people in methods and approaches to get more Agile in the finance department. So she will give us here an overview why and how Agile matters. And so Marie-Louise, the floor is yours. This is.
Sorry, yeah, I'll just, need to switch between the two monitors. So thanks for your introduction.
That was Agile.
Thanks for your introduction, Chris. I'll just need maybe 10 seconds to get settled. I will share my screen and see if that works. So you should see my presentation.
Yeah, it's all fine. Yep.
Thank you very much for confirming. And then, okay.
And just for the beginning, so please feel free if you have questions during the presentation. You can put it in the chat. At the end of the presentation, we will have some time for Q&A. But so I will a little bit monitor the chat, and then I also will collect everything. So yeah, okay. So Marie.
Okay, yes, thanks again, Chris. Yeah, I was just about to say that, so there will be a Q&A part at the end, so feel free to pop your questions into the chat, and I'm happy to answer them later. Yeah, I'm here to talk about agility and controlling today, and well, one of the biggest changes really when organizations approach agility company-wide is to see how finance and controlling work or operate as a department in the whole organization. But even without changing the whole organizational function, there is a possibility for controlling to operate in an agile way, and there's a lot of advantages to do so. And I want to take time today to outline why do current methods often fail nowadays, and how complexity really changes the way of working and approaching controlling and operations. So how can Agile really help in solving these problems and these challenges? And at the end, how can controllers reinvent themselves and become true business partners? So we will look at all these things. And I want to start by telling you a little story about this little mountain climber here. He's called Max, and Max is really, really enthusiastic about his job. So he's a mountain climber by heart. That's what he's good at. That's what he's always done. And he has a lot of experience in climbing mountains. He likes the stable environment, really. So, he knows what to do. He knows which tool he needs to use. Nothing really changes too much apart from some seasonal effects he has, but he can handle them. So he's really happy in his mountain climbing world. And he also knows that when he regularly analyzes what's maybe going wrong, or, if the seasons are going to change, and he's ready to adapt to that nothing really can happen to him. So, yeah, he is happy because it gives him safety and some sort of stability to know what's going to happen. And that's kind of like the surrounding he's living in. So as I said, Max is good in what he's doing. So he's been asked quite, sorry, I'm messing up my screen here. We are going to that one, sorry. So as I said, Max is good as what he's doing. So he's regularly asked to explain to other people what they need to do in order to become a good mountain climber and to hit target. So he's talking about tools they need, and they have been passed down through generations. And, you know, there's topics like target performance deviations, where you know, if you don't, like if you have deviations there, then you can react, and there's clear planning cycles. So everything has like a causal chain, and you just know what to do from history. The knowledge of the past really is a guarantee for future success, and this also stabilizes the whole situation. But things slightly change, like, you know, he starts to experience that his analyzers more often fail. They are not that accurate anymore. And this kind of like, he doesn't really know how to handle the situation. So he tries even harder with his analyzers to predict the future even more. So what he does is really deep diving into the numbers to see what he might have lost in the past, or, you know, where he's not considering some facts. So he's analyzing really, really hard by deviations and showing what can happen then, and what information he can draw from that for the future to help him reach a higher level again, and feel better about himself, and also make the others, like his customers, follow his advice again. And what really has happened here is that he experienced I think there's somebody who's still got his tone on. Yeah, thank you very much. So what he really sees here is that the general conditions have changed. So he doesn't know what the surrounding is there anymore, and that's volatility. He looks out but sees nothing really but dark clouds around him on the mountain. So he's uncertain. What should I do? What's next? He doesn't really recognize the way to go anymore. Which one should he take? And should he take other people with him? Should he go alone? And the whole complexity of the situation changes. And that at the end, he's not really sure if what he sees really is what it is. So is it rain clouds he's seeing? Is it snow? Is it something else he hasn't seen before? What I described here as a model is called the VUCA world. So you can only steer by sight, and the knowledge of the past is of limited help for the future. And this is really a hard thing for Max to understand. And I feel that a lot of controllers feel like Max these days, because the complexity has increased and the basic conditions are changing. The surrounding is characterized by unsteadiness, and there's really not a best practice anymore. So there's some thought of uncertainty on what to do and where to go next. Yet you have to answer the questions from management, and they want to know where to go. And I think, like from most controllers, at least it was always my approach of doing it, I wanted to tell like management and be a good business partner and show them what options they had, and wanted to give them some sort of security and control. But I had to understand that this sort of control really at the end is an illusion, because what is control? There's a definition to that. Control is the power to influence or direct people's behavior or the course of events. And you would say in business terms, it would be controlling people as well as controlling the future. So for us controllers, it's really about, you know, planning and then draw action from that. But at the end, the people can't and must not be managed, and the future is not predictable and it's not manageable. And this is a really, really big thing to understand about the whole VUCA world and the way agility helps here, that there is no safety. And by understanding this, you will find that you can start, reacting and not acting. So what helps here is that Max, and I think also controllers, need to accept that an uncertainty is a constant in business environment. And so we are here. And this is really a game changer. If you can accept that we cannot plan the future anymore as we did in the past, and it worked really, really well in the past, but if you expect that you can't do that anymore and that there's not such thing as safety in a plan, you will eventually look for other options. And I did that myself a couple of years ago because I thought, or I felt in my environment that the way I was planning, the way I was approaching things as a controller, didn't hit target, and it was really frustrating for me as a team leader, and also before that for me as a member of staff to sit on budgets and monthly reportings and doing predictions, which more often failed. So I thought to myself, what can I do? And well, I started to look at, other areas and like other departments, what they are doing. And I found out about agility and about agile mindset and agile methods. And this really is a way of approaching uncertainty in a really, really nice way. So I want to tell you a little bit more about that and about how it helped me to really go further from that. I mean, when you talk about uncertainty and accepting uncertainty as a constant in the whole planning process or in the whole environment, because you cannot control the environment anymore, then there's like options you have to kind of like conquer that. And the easiest way really to do that is to involve other people. And there's that thing called interdisciplinary teams. So, which is nothing less than reducing the risk by, only deciding what one people has experience of or think, to kind of like spreading the news and like get everyone involved into the subject and to get their experience, and so reducing the risk of falling short on something. You have short coordination cycles which help communicate, and also you can see if people are running into different directions, which also has a nice side effect. It helps with resources, because you can address that at a very early stage. And the transparency and communication is also a huge part, because when you start sharing your experience and start sharing on what you're working at the moment, people can see what you're doing and they can engage. And so you start talking not only about what you're doing, but maybe how you do it, and you keep changing processes or, adapting, and you learn from each other. So the whole process gets better in doing that. And this really leads to trust and respect and a really good quality of work. And I know that we are talking a lot about motivation these days, and many leaders ask, like, how can I motivate my team? I think that's an intrinsic thing. So you can't, put motivation from the outside, but you can, as a leader, build a frame, be a coach to your team, and then allow motivation to happen by trusting your people, by letting them talk, letting them engage, interact. So what has happened here is that the role of Max in the whole group has changed now. So he's not the one telling everyone what to do, but he's a coach who has conquered many mountains, so he's experienced. But he also knows that, you know, the group is really what takes it to, hit the target and to get over the next mountain. So agility at the end really is all about that. It's about adapting to the environment, but on a business level. And much of what I have said just right now is written down in the so-called Agile Manifesto, the Agile Manifesto, sorry. This is something that was published around the turn of the century. And it's basically, when we talk about Agile, this is what it really comes down to at the end, the Agile Manifesto. I mean, many people of us like use the word Agile and mean really total flexibility. So they would say something like, okay, I want something really quickly. I want controlling to be more agile, or, you know, I want my budget to be more agile. But what they really mean there is stop doing what you're doing, and you know, change immediately, and, you know, be more flexible. But that's not agile. That's kind of like lack of focus. Agile is not ad hoc. Agile is a very efficient and effective way of doing things, but also like with a very, very clear focus. And the focus is set on the practices and principles we have, and they are shown in the Agile Manifesto. I want to read out some of them to you just to see, you know, where we are going. So the values, for example, is individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Working software, as it comes from the IT department, over comprehensive documentation. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Responding to change over following a plan. So it's really about adapting. It's really about mindset. It's about engaging, interacting, and leaving processes kind of behind. It's not saying that you shouldn't do any documentation anymore and that you shouldn't do any plans anymore. It's saying that individuals and interactions are more important than processes and tools. And they define that even further in the 12 principles. So they commit to these principles, and what Agile is about at the end is really hitting the values and the principles. For example, satisfying the customer through early and continuous delivery of value. So that is the value thought of it. You might have heard of Agile when they put customer value above everything. So this is a huge part to think about what really creates value. And this is really interesting for a controlling organization as well, thinking of controlling departments and strong reportings. And I'm sure like every department finds things kind of like historically grown reports and stuff like that, which have not been questioned that much. If you really apply customer value into a controlling department, that's a huge efficiency boost, because you keep re-questioning, is what I'm doing really, creating value? I mean, we are not talking to the end customers. Obviously, we are not talking like our customer is not the market, but the customer from the controlling point of view are stakeholders, are management, and maybe other departments. So when we as a controlling department start thinking about creating value for them internally, this is a really interesting thought about, you know, allocating resources and also cost saving mechanisms, because I think there's a lot of processes, especially in corporate functions, where you do stuff just because it's been historically grown. So this is about the customer value. and welcome changing requirements even late in the process. So what they say here is that you should embrace change even when it's occurring late. I think this is also a very different thought in controlling, where you try to, you know, put everything into plan and be very, very detailed, and it takes weeks and months to do a forecast or budget or monthly plan, and then it's outdated once it's done. So for sure, there needs to be some rethinking on that point. How can we get to a point where we are as quick so that we can, have changing requirements within our processes? Deliver frequently, work together daily throughout the project. This is something, for example, in the Scrum guide, where they use this in Scrum as daily stand-ups. And this is also what I said earlier about these short circles, where you just, you know, talk about you have done to address roadblockers more earlier in the process, so to see where you might be stuck. Build projects around motivated individuals. So think about how can motivation arise within a team. Have a face-to-face conversation instead of, you know, phone and all these mail ping pong there sometimes. So the only thing here, it says at the end, that matters is working software or like a working project. This is the only measurement of progress at the end. I think that's a really interesting thought for controlling as well, to see if something that has worked and that created value, if that's really the top gear at the end, or the top aim to follow. That's a different approach as well to how we control as the department. Promote sustainable development. So, you know, to have a level or to reach a level where you can work on constantly, so that you don't get disrupted too often, that you don't have kind of like all these peaks where there's sometimes like peaks of work, and then there's phases where you don't have to do that much, so that you that you work on a constant level. With technical excellence, of course, this is something we all try to do. Simplicity, make it as easy as possible. Don't make it too complicated. I'm thinking about the budget again, because that was one of the biggest points for me always in the company, the whole budget process that frustrated me a lot. And self-organizing teams, the Scrum answer to that is, the development team, and having Scrum Masters and product owners to kind of like guide the team. At regular intervals, reflect and adjust the behavior, something really important as well. So it's a lot about adapting, learning, and changing, and becoming a learning department, becoming a learning organization is something that I like a lot about Agile, because it enables you to grow and to adapt again. And I think this is what provides safety at the end when we talk about safety, that, you know, since you're learning, since you're adapting, the risk of failing is reduced a lot. What's interesting about this, what we've been talking about now, is that we have only talked about principles and values, so no methods there at all. And this is what Agile is about at the end. It's about mindset. It's about being Agile. The methods and tools and practices, they only help to be Agile. So they help to reach the values and the principles. So you can say at the end, everything that helps to get a team to be better in the values and better in the principles is Agile methods and tools and practices. So and I mean, there's frameworks, for example, like Kanban and Scrum, which cover a lot of these principles. So so that it's kind of like more easily applied. But at the end, everything that helps to walk into that direction is an agile method. And I think you can easily use that in controlling as well. So it's not only for IT. I want to show you a model really quickly because, before we are kind of like heading into the conclusion here, because sometimes you may not know when it's like best to adopt agile frameworks such as Scrum or Kanban. And there's a model, it's called the Canadian model. And the Canadian model defines some 5 areas, which depending on the question or on the topic you have, recommends the use of agile methods or not. And why that? I said earlier that agile is really about efficiency. I mean, we even have it in one of the principles where it says simplicity is essential. So they don't want you to, you know, blow up processes just to say, oh, I used an agile method. And at the end, it's important to see in what kind of task you have in front of you. So, for example, if you have a working monthly process and you know what's next, then you can just kind of like use a checklist and just go through step by step. Well, maybe when you're in a reflection process and you're doing your daily stand-ups and you see, okay, there's some sort of improvement here, I could improve the process. It's not a simple thing anymore where we have a clear cause and effect relationship, but it's getting a bit more complicated. So you need a bit more know-how. There's not a best practice, but a good practice. So there's a lot of ways to do it. Then you're in a different role here. And then there's projects, for example, the BI project, or even new budgeting processes or something like that. And this is really getting complex. So you have to do kind of like a try and error approach. Sometimes, and not very often, but we experience it now with COVID, it's a chaotic situation. So you don't really know what to do, and you have to act fast and then see where it goes, and then react again, you know. And this is what Agile is really about transparency and inspection, and then adaptation, reaction. So the more complex the task is you have, the more likely or the better it is to use Agile frameworks in order to help you conquer the situation. It says, on the other hand, the easier it is, it would only kind of like, increase the inefficiency when you don't use a checklist, for example. So this may be for the Canadian model. At the end, as a conclusion, what we see maybe from the story from Max now is that the future is not predictable anymore, and uncertainty is a constant in the business environment. So we have to meet the challenges of the VUCA world, and VUCA as a complex world also meets the Canadian model, you know, the complex part there. So this is why Agile is a good approach in the VUCA world, because it helps you with uncertainty and with complex situations. I hope that you understood that Agile primarily means mindset, and the methods are only there to establish Agile principles and values. I experienced that this mindset shift is more like the largest thing really, or the largest step you have to take in order to adopt agility in an organization. And yeah, last but not least, agile frameworks like Scrum make sense of situations are at least complicated according to Sinefin. So that closes the cycle to the VUCA world. Okay, so thank you for your attention. I want to draw your attention to some upcoming events for the ICV. As Chris said earlier on, I'm leading the work group Agile Controlling together with Swiss professor Ulrich Egle. And we just kicked off 3 months ago, and we are really happy for anybody to join us on our way and the group. We are more than nearly 50 people now in the work group, which I think is really, really good. And yeah, we have remote meetings every last Tuesday of the month. So I'd be happy if you join, just send me an email or go to the ICV homepage. This is where you can also find the contact details. We have recorded a podcast on agile controlling, especially mindset, so you might want to listen to that. And there's also a series of articles coming up in the Controller magazine from January to July. So yeah, it's a whole series on agile basics, agile methods in the organization and projects to improve workflows, and at the end, the competences of an agile controller. So you might want to read that as well. Thank you very much.
So we are now open for questions. Please feel free to open your mic and ask on your own, or please put it in the chat. Don't be shy.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Have you ever discussed in this controller community if you want to change the naming of your role, as it's maybe not as suitable to what the future will require from you anymore?
Sorry,
controller. Yeah.
To rename the name of the role, or?
Yeah, controller is a very traditional name, and we're moving away from this controlled environment and the control.
Yeah.
That's a tough one, Anna. That's a
yes,
tough one.
yes.
No, actually, we haven't thought about changing the name. No, but we talk a lot about the role. Actually, you know, about the purpose really of the controller, and you know, usually the controller is an independent person. So and it's interesting to see if you at the end control the organization, like, you know, the agile organization, or if as a controlling department itself work agile. So this is things where we are talking about. But we have to say, with the finance functions at the moment, there's not that much of experience out there. So there's some people which have used agile methods in projects, for example, or where they, you know, started being part of agile transformation processes. But even like big companies I talked to, where they said they are agile, you know, they are agile in like the operational part of the company. So they kind of like left corporate functions out of the whole thing, which I think is really interesting. And then they argue that they say, well, yeah, that's corporate functions. You know, we don't really know how to integrate them into the rest of the company. And I think you can do it both ways. I think you can work agile as a department, and you can adopt agile methods to get better and to re-question what you're doing. And this is the cost effects I talked about earlier. I mean, like in the departments I worked, this historically grown thing, reports, monthly reports, abbreviation analysis we did, that took like most of the time of my staff, and re-questioning that, you know, what kind of value it gives to the whole company. I think starting there is a really, really big thing. But also, and I really like that thought also, to see how an agile organization needs controllers to get even better. So what we can do to improve, for example, sprints, you know, and be a part in there, or be maybe like also a neutral part to the Scrum Master, and help him to do a better job by looking at the numbers. And sometimes I get the feeling that people believe that Agile is, you know, I don't have a budget, I don't want to be too concrete, and, you know, I'll just, you know, move on with what I'm doing. But I think this is really a point where controlling hit in there and be a business partner, for example, to the Scrum Master. And that's a really interesting role. And I know that there's not a lot of ideas out there at the moment. And I hope we will kind of like, as we talk, for example, in the work group, but just in general, you know, discuss these things.
I just want to add to this. So Anna, I think the question is really interesting. So the founder of the ICV, so that's Dele is his name. He has defined a very simple framework. It's called Weg. So just to say in German, so Wachstum, Entwicklung und Gewinn. So growth, development, and profit. And I think when we talk about how to, so what means Agile for controlling and what it should be, he also said like the controller is like a navigator. So in German, Lotse. So he used the word of Lotse, a navigator that is really helping the business for growth, development, and profit. And just when you bring it down to this, and then think about, let me say, teal organization, and what we will talk about, and I think then it goes in this direction, you know, how you call it. So in the end, you know, you have like data scientists, and you have like a proficiency, and they have their names, okay. But I think when you think about it, what it means, yeah, that's where it goes. So to be more simply, to really focus on the core of what it is, yeah. And you could call it a navigator if you like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Business
Any
partner
other questions?
sounds nicer.
So just from my side, so you told me you have about 40 members in the group, yeah. So in the subject matter working group, and so what is currently so the maturity, the experience of the members there, who is already trying out Agile approaches there? So how do you see that in your team?
Yeah. So I mean, we are growing, and I would say half of the people have practical experience with Agile, either in an organization or in a project. Most of them in a project, though, and kind of like half of them are about they have theoretical knowledge, or kind of like they are just starting and have a general interest, which is really welcome also, because we have nice discussions then about like why should we do that. And yeah, so this is kind of like the group situation we have at the moment. And very interestingly, the questions that are usually come first are how to apply Agile methods. So I think that's a very controlling way to ask. You know, we are a lot about methods, so we want to, you know, learn a method to be better. And I think like to understand that Agile is mindset, and you can kind of like choose whatever method you want, as long as it helps you reach the values and the principles. So this is like one thing. And the other thing is, do we have to forget everything that we have known so far and, you know, learn something else, and everything that we've done before is of no value anymore? this is a big concern, and this is what we talk about a lot. And the answer usually, like not only from me, but from the group, is that you need those tools. I mean, you need, you still need a P&L and stuff like that, you know, but I think we have to widen our horizon, and we have to think more about such things as mindset, and really adapt new tools. So in an agile way, you would say have a growth mindset to learn new stuff and be a cherry picker, and just add whatever you want to your basket in order to be better at what you're doing. And this can be totally different for everybody, you know.
Okay. So I think with this, if there are no other questions, so then let's jump over to the next presentation. And I think it's really now a contrast to, and it puts that on top with Anna, that has, she has really a 3 to 4 years experience already in, let me say, experimenting and really implementing, and I would call that more like a teal organization. I've looked into, I was really like teal and agile, what does it mean? So what you see often is like teal is the new agile. So, and I think that with this teal organization approach, you are really, that agile is one of that thing. So one of the characteristics of what you want to achieve with that. And so Anna is really now speaking about her experience personally, more really out of her view. It's not like an official Roche presentation. And just as a side note, you will have the slides from Marie-Louise, so the slides will be available. But so now Anna will talk about her experience, and this is really like in this room. So you will not have any material here or so. And I really ask you, and please feel free to really ask questions now, because then Anna is really talking about the story of their journey to a transformation of an organization. And just let me add, so I know Anna since 20 years now, so it's really a long time. Really thinking back. She has started as a, I know really, it's not like yesterday, but so as a trainee in IT. Then she ran through HR, and then supply chain, then development, and now she is working in data science as a leader there. And so I think she has a lot of a business background, and can really tell us a little bit more really practically about what it means, the challenge to get Agile into a teal organization. So happy, Anna, that we have you with us. Please start.
Thank you, Christian.
Okay, welcome back. We will have a look at the word cloud again soon, but first I would like to introduce our next session and speaker. Professor Dr. Utz Schäfer is the Director of Management, Accounting and Control at WHU, a renowned business school in Wallendar, Germany. And as probably many of the ICV members here know, Utz is Chairman of the Board of Trustees of ICV. His research focus is on controlling and strategy execution, in particular the role of controllers in the digital transformation. And just recently, Utz published an article titled Levers of Organizational Resilience in the Controlling and Management Review Journal. This is also why he's here today, to share what as professionals we can do to increase our resilience in our organization, and also to highlight the major challenges, for example, in terms of maximizing efficiency. I can also say that I attended the online controlling week in August, organized by the business school WHU, and the professor's presentation was very engaging. So feel free to use the chat function again to ask your questions, which we can address during or also after the presentation. So with that, welcome Utz, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marco, for that nice introduction. Yeah, let me maybe start out with sharing my slide again. I do have slides. Give me a second.
Sure, take your time.
So there we go, I hope. Yeah, kind of a tough cut, right? Coming from Agile and Teal ideas to organizational resilience. Although I fully agree with what has been said before, that in particularly Agile and resilience really do go together. Let me maybe quickly tell you what I see as resilience, how I would define resilience. And I'm not sure at what point in time, Mark, we want to share the word cloud. Will you basically show it, or should I?
I can share it after your
I think
slide.
That would be cool, right? Because we were thinking before how we should do this, but given that the break was pretty short, I think that's probably the easiest way to do it, right?
Sure.
And then I'll basically resume. So really, really short, what is organizational, right? Not individual resilience. And why do we need it? And why have a lot of people started actually to talk about it this year, particularly over summer? And from my point of view, it's a pretty simple story. The world is more and more VUCA, at least that's what we have heard today and many other times, pretty often this year and before. So more volatile, more uncertain, more complex, more ambiguous. At least this is how we perceive it. There are more external shocks. Well, and maybe it's not more things happening, right? Maybe not more shocks somewhere in the world, but we are interconnected. Things go faster. So we all feel, I guess, that the frequency and maybe also the magnitude of external shocks is going up. Now, how has literature, how has academia tried to deal with in earlier times? And when I was young, or younger than today, when I was a student, when I was a doctoral student, there was a lot of discussion about foresight, right? So the idea that we need to anticipate those things. And I can still remember, and it's only like a good 20 years back, when we did a study as a young assistant professor, doctoral student, where we talked to foresight institutions in Germany, like Daimler had a foresight institute in Berlin, actually, right? Not in Stuttgart. And here and there, and these were all fascinating things, but I think we all share, I would guess, I would hope, the understanding that foresight has its limits. We cannot anticipate all of those shocks. And there's been, as you might know, a huge discussion about whether COVID-19 is black swan, completely unforeseeable, or if it's a gray swan or a gray rhinoceros or whatever it is. So to what extent we could anticipate those things, or we could have anticipated those things. But honestly, I think this is a largely academic debate, because we all know again and again, there are things that surprise us. And we might have known that a pandemic can happen, just as well as we know today that the big one in terms of earthquake might happen, just as well as we know today that the internet might break down, over the cloud might break down, all sorts of horrible things, a dirty nuclear bomb on a major city, all those things might happen. But it doesn't really help us from a business point of view, right? Because we cannot, anticipate those things more precisely. So the idea comes in that in addition to trying to foresee things, which finds its limits clearly, we need to prepare to things where we don't really know what exactly they will be and when they will come. So we need to develop a certain ability on an organizational, on a corporate level, to absorb stress and to respond and adapt to those shocks, right? Like a boxer, right? Of course, as a boxer in the ring, you try to anticipate the hits, but at the same time, you need to train yourself to be able also to suffer from a hit and still be standing, right? And still fight back. That's the whole idea. And as I indicated before, it's really fascinating this year with COVID coming in, that suddenly a lot of CFOs, a lot of CEOs all over the place, and I just, chose a random sample of 2, start to say, well, of course, resilience is an Erfolgsfaktor, right? And of course, this is a success factor. And the crisis shows us that if you're not resilient, you're left with nothing. Kind of a strong statement, isn't it? If you're not resilient, you're left with nothing. So this is my understanding of resilience. Now, the funny thing is, or the interesting thing is, talk to 5 people what resilience really requires. And I get 6 different answers. And that, of course, reminds me of this blind man and an elephant thing that you might have seen in other contexts. All sorts of people being blind, trying to understand what an elephant really is. And then they touch on different parts of that elephant. And of course, they come to completely different conclusions. And I feel same thing we oftentimes face when we talk about resilience. Do you talk to a finance guy, a supply chain person, a HR person, a operations person, somebody from different parts of the company, and you tend to get, at least that's my take, different answers. So what does it really take? And I think there, Marco, if you could take over, it would be cool, maybe to share your understanding, your take, what resilience really is. And I hope then, Marco, while you're sharing, Marco, just go ahead, feel free. Or do I have to stop sharing for that?
Yeah, you have to stop sharing.
Okay, no problem.
Share the result from the word.
Yeah, sure. I hope it was clear to you the way, Marco, or we asked the question that we were asking for organizational resilience, really. Maybe there are differences, right? But if I look at this cloud, really interesting, I'm glad we did it. Mindfulness, do not lose the drive, endurance, flexibility, honesty, purpose. Yeah, absolutely. Agility, supporting environment, openness, courage to speak up, ownership, strong, etc. You see it yourself. So let's keep that in mind. Let's take a photo here. Let's park it here somewhere, and then let's compare it with what I come up with. And then I will stop after that. I will stop after a while, hoping that we then have a discussion, and let's see, I have more material, no worries. I'm a professor, I always have many slides, but I'd rather drop some of them for the benefit of us having a discussion. So I'll try to share back. Hope that works as smooth as before. After 6 months of online teaching, you should get a certain routine in those things. There we go. So what is organizational corporate resilience for me? And let me tell you before I go on, not 100% what you had in your cloud, which might make it interesting, right? So what does it need to become more resilient on a corporate level? For me, it's 4 things. And I want to basically make 2 iterations, a quick one, just giving you the headlines. And then in a second iteration, I'll try to dive a little bit deeper. So to explain a little bit more what I really mean and what that implies. To become more resilient, I really think we need to look at risk management, corporate risk management again, and take a fresh look there. Particularly what I call strategic risk management. How to anticipate and prepare for new challenges and disruptions. And this is not only this effort to foresee, to foresight, to anticipate again. There are limits to that, as we said already. But I really think that this whole process can help companies to prepare better for things coming up, even if they cannot predict, anticipate what exactly will come up. And I'll deep dive here. I'll try to explain what I mean. We need to change risk management, corporate risk management as it is. It's a disaster in our context, I would argue. The second thing we need to look at is resource availability. And I'm a little bit surprised that this didn't come up more in your word cloud, because if I talk to finance people, controllers, they often come with, yeah, of course, financial slack, right? Leverage, levels of debt, levels of working capital, right? When they talk about resilience, financial resilience, which at the end of the day is all about that part of the concept, resource availability. How to make sure that when the shock hits, you still have sufficient resources available. So you need slack, you need buffer, you need reserves. And I will make 2 points here. First of all, it's not only about financial slack, but also about other slacks. And secondly, I will try to make the point that there is an inherent conflict between efficiency, the mantra of controllers, who we maybe should rename. I thought that was a great discussion. Efficiency as the mantra of controllers, and extra resources that are around. And all the controllers in the room, let's be honest for a second. How do we typically call resources that are around that we don't necessarily need, that bring us away from being 100% efficient? I know people who call it waste. Now here I try to reframe this and say, this is not waste. Hey, this is slack. This is something we need to be more resilient. Third element, robust and flexible operations. Not always the focus of controllers and finance people, but how to set up robust, flexible processes, system structures. I would argue from many perspectives, if you talk about really making the company more adaptive, more resilient, more, bring it more in a position to withstand an attack or external shock, is something we need to talk about. Processes, system structures, and you're already getting what it seems to be. That's a lot, right? That's not a quick project. And the fourth one, and now we come together again. I think that's also the theme of the 2 great presentations earlier. It's also about adaptive management. On purpose, I said adaptive. I didn't say agile. Make it agile if you want to. I'm always a little bit hesitant to talk about agile, because for me, agile is a pretty narrow term, a precisely defined term, and that has been inflated a little bit, right? Used in a very inflationary way in the last 5 to 10 years, say. Where suddenly everything that was just adaptive before now is suddenly agile. And my personal definition of agile is a little bit more narrow, so I call it adaptive, but again, whatever you want to call it, I'm not fighting for terminology here. So how to make management more flexible and adaptive, right? That's also something, and honestly, most controllers I have talked to before, when we talk about our resilience on a corporate level, this is not what they have come up with in their first intuition, in their first association. So I'm really excited about your word cloud and your understanding here in the room. So 4 elements, 4 building blocks. Takeaway number 1, before I go any deeper, from my perspective, that's a lot of stuff, right? So we will probably need to check carefully what we really need in a particular corporate situation, whether we need to do all those things to become resilient, or, which will be my argument, we will need to pick and choose and try to understand how different building blocks, different elements of corporate resilience go together, how they substitute each other, how they complement each other, how they reinforce each other. And second learning may be already here. At the end of the long day, if you want to become really resilient, in most cases, in a lot of cases, that will require a very fundamental change. So let me do my second iteration and go a little bit deeper and talk about risk management. And I want to start out with sharing how I perceive corporate risk management in most organizations today, particularly when I talk about large companies like Roche, like you know, that middle-sized upwards companies. I think in most companies, there is a strong focus on the quantification and reporting of known risk. The quantification and reporting of risk that we already know about. And of course, you want to avoid them or you want to eliminate them cost effectively. And you want to make sure that you're compliant, of course. And I'm not saying this is bad. Of course, you need to report and quantify your risk. But what I'm trying to say is that we might need to move on. We need to do two things. I think we need to put a stronger focus on what I call strategic business risks, risks associated with your business, which are not necessarily bad, which you want to have, which you maybe even want to undertake, because risk return, more risk is higher return, and that requires interactive discussions. This is not a matter of being compliant and reporting and quantifying. This is a debate that management needs to have, right? So that's one thing. And the second thing that I think risk management needs to look to much more intensively, and that goes a little bit closer to our discussion of resilience, is we also need to take much more account of external uncontrollable risks, like these external shocks we've been talking about, which traditional risk management doesn't do, in my eyes, in my observation, to the degree that they should do it. And yes, oftentimes we talk about insurance and hedging programs, we talk about crisis management procedures, critical incident management teams, all that, which is great, which is good. You need to have them in place to be resilient, even though your crisis procedures will never exactly 100% be what you need in the particular crisis that is coming, but it gives you a good starting point. And if you can insure and hedge certain things, always a cost-benefit thing, might also be super helpful. But beyond this, I think we need to go further and make management deal with different futures. Make them on a regular basis before the crisis hits. Help them to prepare for the unforeseen by making it a routine to deal with, you know, different futures, different unforeseen things. Not because they will come, not because this is exactly what will happen, but if you do that every year, every half year, 2-3 days, intensively do a real scenario analysis that deserves the term, not the scenario analysis that you typically have in practice, where you have a best case, a worst case, and a middle case, and then you adjust the assumptions a little bit. Again, also fair to do that, but for me, this is more sensitivity analysis. This is more, easy simulation to a certain extent. But if you really go for, get your management team out for 3 days, if you really deal with completely new futures, how would we react to, if you do that on a regular basis, I think management here in the mind is much better prepared for the unknown. It can be a scenario analysis and of course, wargaming, stress testing. So there are a couple of techniques there that can facilitate this. But that's all of that is risk management for me. And I think a lot of companies, maybe it happens to a certain extent, maybe it doesn't happen at all, but typically it's not seen as something that should happen or be moderated, facilitated by risk management and or controlling. And I think there's a lot of potential there. So that's one element. Take risk management out of this, staff function supported reporting and quantification of well-known risks and extend the scope of risk management. The second thing, and then of course, we go back to our earlier presentations, is you need to become adaptive. And yes, I could not agree more. This is a mindset issue. Yes, you need to have the tools and the processes and all those things in place. At least you need to be working on them, and it's a journey, right? It's not a short-term thing. But that will, at the end of the long day, only work if you really, have the context in an appropriate way. And that's about values, that's about purpose, that's about mental fortitude, optimistic, self-confident mindset. Honestly, I think this is really where individual resilience meets corporate resilience, right? Here they go together, right? And I think they reinforce each other here in this context of adaptive management. But be careful, it's not that simple. No? There's more to corporate resilience than this, but it's an important component. And then there is culture, right? And what you see here on the slide, transparency and open information exchange, power of the better argument, goal orientation and culture of accountability. Now that's a little bit of a fun part of my presentation. This is what we in Fallendar at WHU call a controlling culture. Yes, a controlling culture, not an agile culture. A good controlling as it should be, hey, that needs to be about transparency, open information exchange across functional silos. What else? The power of the better argument based on data, based on analysis. And if I listened to Marie-Louise earlier, I found so many things here, sounded back, came back to me. Clear targets, visionary targets, purposeful targets, yes. A culture of accountability, a culture of entrepreneurship, you might say, hey, this is ours. So I think an agile culture and an ideal controlling culture, as we would normatively propagate it, at least at WHU, are maybe much closer together than we think. And I'm not saying that this is the average controlling culture in a company, right? But this is what it should be.
Just to interrupt here, Utz, where would you also see the teal organization model fit in here? Like Anna described, or?
Obviously a very, in terms of mindset and culture, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. In terms of mindset and culture, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Many other things are different. So don't get that wrong or misquote that in the sense of, I think controllers, which again is why I like this question before about shouldn't we rename them? I think most controllers, we all have been raised, and I as a professor have also been raised, don't get me wrong, in a context where the company is run via plans, right? Dominant coordination by plan is how we call this in organizational theory. Now, teal as well as agile and related concepts are mutual adjustment dominance. And both are associated with different cultures and different mindsets, and they're so different. And to be very honest, this is like the earth is flat and the earth is round. This is a paradigmatic change. And what do we know about paradigmatic changes? There is so much inertia. There are so many aggressive reactions towards people who are open and blunt and inform the community that if you really want to go there, you have to jump, and it's no incremental movement. And it will either take long or it will be an extreme shock. So I'm very skeptical about, how quickly we will make that transition as finance function and community and controllers, because this is so fundamental. If you really talk about agile, right? And like Marie-Louise, not about these alibi projects that you have in many large companies, right? This is alibi, this is window dressing, right? But the real thing, right? Let me move on because I'm watching my time and I'm already getting nervous on slide 2 or something. Yeah. And just quick, the interesting thing is your budgeting is of course also something you need to talk about in that context real quick. And I'm not trying to elaborate, and I will not elaborate on the beyond budgeting concept and Bjarne Buxnes and all the others, Hope Fraser. Just again, if you look at their concept, just look at the headline if you're not so familiar with it. If you are familiar with it, well, forget the slide, right? It's management processes plus tools you could add, and it's leadership principles. Again, context, culture, mindset. It's the combination. You need both, right? But that's, I think, at that stage of our day, nothing new. So let me skip this. The good news here is, and this is why the slide is in the deck, we don't need to reinvent the world. That community has been around for 20 years. Bjarne would say, no, wrong, 25 years, yeah, or whatever, 20, 25 years. And they have use cases, right? They have worked on this. They have been fighting whether you should implement. Before we had this question, how do we start, right? Should we start with the processes and the tools, or should we start with the culture and the mindset? Now also a little bit the discussion, Marie-Louise's great presentation. And this is a dilemma because, my experience is when I talk soft stuff to my students, they don't listen. So if I want them to listen, I have to do things. First of all, I have to gain a reputation. And honestly, it helps that I did some consulting earlier. McKinsey is a cool company. Oh, there must be something, right? It helps that I'm an alum of the school. And the third thing that helps is if I start with the tools and if I tell them, you know, if I deal with the tools, if I make a convincing case there, if they see we do all hard number crunching and it's really convincing, and then the door is open and then I can sell them the soft stuff. If I start with the soft stuff right away, lost. And I guess that's pretty much the same thing in companies, if you're honest, right? So lots to be discussed here, right? And here's our controlling culture, again, on a slide. As I said before, this is something you need in Agile and in resilience as well. Now, third element, we're still making our little journey through these 4 boxes. Now, all the elements, the levers that you need for resilience or that you can mobilize for resilience. And again, I didn't word it perfectly a second ago. You don't necessarily need all of them, but you need to make your choices. You need to pick and you need to understand basically what the material is. So the third box for me is resource availability. Call it slack, call it buffer. As I said before, for controllers, typically the story goes about financial slack. You know, how much cash do I have on the bank account? How high is my leverage, levels of debt, all those things. And again, message number 1, think about operational slack. How many inventories do you have? All those things. But then keep on going. Human slack. Again, individual resilience means organizational resilience. If you're completely understaffed, if your people are completely overworked, and maybe you're asking too much of them in terms of qualification, how do you want them to be resilient? How do you want them to master an unforeseen situation and a shock? Forget it. Conceptual slack. I find this a nice way to put it because this is all about diversity. Right? Have you ever talked about diversity in terms of slack? I have a slack in terms of different perspectives, right? Be that nationalities, be that cultures, be that gender, be that whatever it is, different disciplines. It's conceptual slack. You have different resources available in terms of different perspectives, right? And that helps you in crisis, that helps you in unforeseen situation as a company. How big is your conceptual slack in your company, in your organization? And last not least, social slack. And this is, I write here goal alignment and embedded as an external network. So how deeply embedded are you and how well embedded are you in the context of your suppliers, your customers, your government, your local authorities? Simple example, my gym, as an old person, I go to Kpis training once a week to do my sports. I think they like in many other gyms here in the crisis, they would have gone bankrupt already if not a lot of people like me would have been loyal and over summer, if not, would have kept paying our monthly fees without any service, right? And they would have had the right to ask the money back. A lot of people didn't do this. So how to get customers, suppliers, government, local authorities to making that move and not asking the money back or giving you extra money if you're the government or local authority. So here I would just want to raise the awareness of controllers and finance people that when we talk about slack, resource availability, we need to talk about all those things. And talking about those things, these different aspects, these different facets, right, of resource availability, I think one way or the other, they all have this slide here in common or underlying. And that brings me again back to controllers again, and controllers looking at resilience. What we learn in the textbooks is that efficiency is on one side and resilience and innovation and change on the other. In other words, if you have resources available, if you reduce that, you become more efficient. But then you want to have some slack, some extra, some excess resources, because we know empirically that's very fruitful, that's very supportive for innovation and change. And we are in times where we really need this. And we also know from the resilience research that this also helps to survive a crisis. Now, it helps to have some money in the bank account when it helps to have some food in the fridge when the shops close down. So what is the optimal level of slack? And if we would come to the conclusion that the world is really becoming more VUCA, if we come to the conclusion that we really need to make our companies more resilient, then we would need to move the optimal level of slack. And again, isn't that a fundamental challenge for us controllers, who many of us have been trained, I think. I mean, you're out there fighting the daily controller life, many of you, so shoot back if you say complete nonsense, Professor. We have been trained to a large degree, and more so in the last 10, 20, 30 years, I would argue, to increase efficiency to the max. Zero inventory, right? Just-in-time delivery. This is just a nice way of saying reduce resilience, reduce slack to a minimum. So what is the optimal level? Maybe we need to rethink this here and there. A last one, robust and flexible operations. I think that that's mostly driven by, if you want to go for that and rethink the level, the degree of robustness and flexibility in your operations, autonomy driving this, and diversification and redundancy. Autonomy, external and internal. So, I mean, remember the popular press, the newspapers in summer, right? We need to increase vertical integration. Maybe we need to deglobalize. Then we have less surface to be attacked, right? That's the idea of autonomy. And internal autonomy helps as well, because if a certain piece, a certain part of your company is hit, no problem, right? Exchange it. It's not affecting the whole thing, right? So you want to have a modular design in your organization to the extent possible. But again, it's not that simple. Deglobalization sounds great, but do we want to recommend everybody to deglobalize because of COVID? Hopefully not. Globalization can also enhance resilience because it enables you to diversify across regions and across businesses, right? So here are other levers. Diversify and create redundancy along the supply chain, across communication channels and vital system. Always make sure you have two in place. Now we all say, well, we need to go for those digital channels and let's get rid of office space. I tell people, well, be careful. What about if the next crisis makes the digital channels useless and they don't work anymore for some reason? Then you want to have an office space, right, to keep on working, right? So the right degree of autonomy, diversification, redundancy. And you can easily guess we could continue for hours talking about details here, but let me remain with the big picture and then close this first part of my little talk. If I take this together, and I hope that came across a little bit in the way I proposed those 4 boxes. For me, this is major change if you really want to become resilient, because the top boxes somehow imply that we move from bureaucracy, again, reporting, quantification of known risks, traditional management forms, to a world of agile. Here I use the term, and call it teal, call it adaptive, moving in that direction. It has many forms. I'm not dogmatic there, and learning, but it's a different world if the focus shifts. Is the world flat or is it round? I seriously think we need to jump there, here and there at a certain point. And take the bottom part, for me, that's also equally dramatic if you take it, if you step back and really think about it, right? Going away from short-term efficiency only to balanced robustness, to finding the right level, the right degree. I mean, in the German tradition, not das rechte Maß, not maximizing everything short-term, no, but long-term thinking, das rechte Maß. And it's really interesting to see that, I mean, in the continental European tradition, I think we have many things going for that, maybe more than in the Anglo-American tradition. We have the Christian Catholic tradition of managing things. If you think about the rules of St. Benedict, right? I mean, how to manage a monastery, read his rules, right? And you don't have to be Christian or be interested in theology. This is pretty helpful for how to manage an organization, and it's all about the right level, the right balance, das rechte Maß. If you think about what does economics really mean from when you go back to the word economia, this is how to manage a household. This is not about making investors happy or investment banks, right? And maximizing everything short term to get the last drop of blood out of your management team to get even more profit. No, it's about managing a household, right? And I could go on with this. So I think there are a lot of things in terms of our cultural tradition here in Europe that we really can build on. And the last slide, and then I stop really for discussion in the first round of Q&As, if I may, and maybe look, watching our time, it's almost maybe also the last round, but anyway, we can discuss. Bad news is, and I don't think it's that easy, right? And part of that, I think, has already been somehow said or implied by my earlier talk. But summarizing this somehow, why is it not that easy? Why am I pretty skeptical about all companies now becoming more resilient next year and the years to come? Honestly, I don't think so, unless we have more shocks and more severe shocks, which I don't hope. Reason number one, the scope of the exercise, right? The 4 boxes with all those aspects. And that requires capabilities from HR, from operations, from finance, from all those functional silos that we try to overcome, but most cases haven't overcome yet. The scope, the time horizon. A lot of those capabilities, Agile, Teal, etc., cannot be built in the short term. These are journeys, right? That doesn't make it easier either. This is a strategy, right? I mean, you cannot say, well, here's my strategy, and now I try to execute it in a more resilient way. Most of those changes, not all of them, but most of them require also a modification of strategy. You know, if you increase the robustness and the flexibility of operations, maybe increase the vertical degree of that implies strategic change. I talked about the mindset change. Yeah? That's really probably the hardest and the most fundamental. And then, I mean, who is Mr. Resilience or Mrs. Resilience? Who do I call at Roche when I want to talk about resilience? Right? Who do I call at WHO? Well, at the end of the day, it will be the CEO. But I mean, who's really doing it, right? Who's really in charge? Who feels in charge? And I'm not saying there are no answers to this. And if I get more time, 2-3 minutes, I'm more than happy to talk about what I think CFOs and controllers can do here. But this is really the challenge. So let me stop here and let me really maybe ask you, I'm not sure how we should do that, Mark, if you want to go into the chat or if you should I?
I can go with the chat, no problem.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, something just the resilience model you presented, it almost looked like a SWOT analysis in a way, right?
Well, it looked like it, yeah. In a sense of 4 boxes. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, yeah. Well, in the sense of you need to look at all the 4 at the same time, and in that sense, they complement each other, have the potential to complement each other. In that sense, I would definitely buy the idea. I'm not sure if you're going further there.
No, it was just a initial response there. And Astrid had the kind of follow-up question on Teal organization again. Would it be perceived as adding risk to a hierarchical leadership culture?
Yeah, of course.
All right.
Yeah, of course. And again, let me really highlight, this is a little bit the point. I'm not sure at what point in time the question was raised. It's a little bit the point I tried to address with the statement that controllers, finance people in particular, and the traditional hierarchical organization and management just as well. We all have been trained in a context of the Agile people call it bureaucratic management model. I call it, based on organization theory, a dominant coordination via plans, right? This is, I mean, look at my textbook, right? I mean, a co-author of a controlling textbook, I'm not even sure, 500 pages, 400 pages, 489, if it's 500, is about a context of dominant coordination via plan, right? The cybernetic cycle, plan, do, check, act. This is formalized systems being the basis, right? And that, I'm not saying this will completely disappear in an Agile or Teal world, but this will no longer dominate the mindsets. And this will, McKinsey would say, you know, be reduced to the stable core. This will not be the dominant way of coordination in the Agile swarm, to take Stern Stewart, whatever your terminology is. And to change that here, forget it. Yeah. You know, I mean, in a way, these mutual adjustment forms with their culture, with their mindset, they are not new, right? I mean, we always had them to a certain degree in partnerships, in startups, in R&D company, in R&D departments, but that was at the fringe. And you know what is at the fringe, as ich mir das so halte, at the fringe, doesn't challenge the mainstream, right? And the powerhouse, right? And the center of power. But the problem is it's no longer the fringe. It starts to, now it's more projects suddenly being agile. And this is still the fringe, right? Look at all those companies, how difficult they find it, these old large companies, to be really innovative. And they do the accelerators and the incubators and what are all the names, right? Aren't those all like helpless efforts to try to get it both together? And surprise, it doesn't work. Where are the major innovations by DAX 30 companies? Where are they, right? And maybe I'm painting now a little bit black and white. I mean, take 20% off, right? But to make the point seriously, anything from org theory, we have an answer for that, right? So a long answer to a great question where I could have given a short answer. Yes, of course. Yeah.
Another good question is, how would you recommend to best define the ideal level of Slack? Which should be embedded. The ideal level of Slack, how would you best recommend to define this to create resilience?
Well, by sitting together and talking. I mean, first of all, how not to define it, not by reading a textbook or listening to a consultant or a professor. I really see it so complex. There are 5, 6 levels of Slack. There are substitutive and complementary relationships within all those levers of resilience as I would see them, right? So I think it's really important to look at both sides, the required level of innovation, the required level of efficiency, the required level of resilience. And that's a SWOT analysis might come handy, as an analysis of the situation that you're in comes handy, right? From the different perspectives. But I think you need to ask that fresh, maybe also with, third-party input, because you might be a little bit in your what type of car do I need? Maybe I was building a race car in the last years, more and more efficient and faster. That's great if you do Formula 1 in Hockenheimring or Nürburgring, or I'm not sure if Switzerland has a Formula 1 thing. But if you're off-site and off-road in the mountains, you rather want to have, invest more in a different car and some reserve tires, right? Some spare tires. I think it's at the end of the day, it's as simple as that.
And from your experience, I mean, also from your other discussions, what could be fair reasons to convince customers to pay for this resilience?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, as a professional, I'm not sure if I want to convince them. I think if it's not coming from within the organization, I would be even more skeptical at it. I mean, we're doing now a little project at a large DAX 30 company that was initiated, interestingly, by a part-time MPA thesis in one of 3 business units, and coincides with a head of the business unit who is really into those things, who read Taleb, a guy really, fighting for such things, and they are trying now really to figure out where they should go and what they need to do and all that. And so you need to have this inner impulse, right? You need to have the top management team. I mean, that is a no-brainer. Everybody says that all the time with every tool, but here more than ever, right? If the CEO, the CFO is not 200% behind this, forget it. Don't invest your time. Don't waste your time. I would argue much more than in other topics. And then, I mean, you might want to do an exercise. And I don't have the empirical cases yet, because I think if companies are going there, they're starting with their more explicit journeys now. So if anybody is going on such a journey, and if you feel like, hey, that might be interesting to exchange ideas, more than happy. But what was the point I wanted to make? But what you then really want to do is, in a first step, identify these win-win situations, where maybe you don't even have a trade-off that could exist, right? For example, no trade-off between efficiency and resilience. I mean, let me put it this way, Agile, nicely done. And then fast forward 10 years, right? Or 5 years or 20 years. It's more efficient and more innovative at the same time and more resilient. So Agile, nicely done, really Agile, is one of those win-win areas where you don't have the trade-off in my eyes, but it's so difficult to get there. Think about sustainability and ecology and greenwashing, all those things. The easy part was always easy, right? If you own a hotel, right? Tell customers not to drop their, basically tell them to reuse their towels, and suddenly you're more ecological, and at the same time you save money because you don't have to wash stuff. Great, win-win. What are those win-wins here for resilience. My suspicion is that we find less of those win-wins than we do find here and there for green issues. But it's only a suspicion. Honestly, I don't know. But we need to start looking for this, right? We need to start thinking about this mindset. And maybe, this gives us back confidence. I mean, one of the side jokes right now, one of the more ironic things is that you find suddenly articles in the Harvard Business Review again, where North American trained accounting professionals and consultants and professors say, maybe we need to increase the prudence in financial accounting. Coming from a continental European tradition, you smile and you say, well, didn't we have that discussion 25 years ago when we dropped our HGB in Germany, and I'm not sure about Switzerland, but when we dropped a lot of these traditional gaps in continental Europe, for the sake of a true and fair view of IFRS and whatever it is, reducing the prudence. Again, maybe that gives us confidence to rethink a couple of things.
Very good. And maybe as a short question, back to the performance view. Have you thought of any KPIs to measure resilience? It's a question from Wilfried.
Yeah, I have, and I'm pretty sure that one KPI is not enough, or that but what a couple of people are thinking about, and we are considering whether we should think about it, is kind of a, call that, is it a checklist or kind of a, a more complex set of KPIs or things you want to consider to go in that direction. And that's always a double-edged sword. On one hand side, it goes natural for controllers. Yeah, there's something to hold on to, and it makes it measurable. We all like this, and makes it a little more tangible, maybe, yes. On the other hand, I'm afraid that now we start with the certification number 417 for resilience, right? And nobody needs this, right? And I don't need it either. So I don't really. So this is. I'm still fighting here, right? But I know even some people at WHU in another Dauer Institute, they're starting out doing something like this, even with money from the federal government. So there are a couple of initiatives underway, I think, but it will definitely be more than a KBR or 2 or 3, right?
Okay, unfortunately, we run out of time, Utz. I know you have some more slides there. For sure, we will hand them out, and there's also the virtual networking, so there might be time for further discussion there as well. But thank you very much for your contribution.
My pleasure. Thank you guys for listening.
Yes, and I must say I'm also curious to see, if this paradigm shift really happens to more resilience, a little bit away from efficiency in companies in the future years, or it will not change maybe. So you have more the skeptical view, right?
Yeah, it will be interesting to see. I mean, just one sentence, if I may. Again, I'm skeptical, but if Internationaler Controllerverein, IMA, CIMA, at the end of the day, you could argue we need to find an answer. These institutions, associations need to find an answer, right? I'm not sure if we're there yet, but will be discussed this in the Board of Trustees at ICV, definitely. So let's see how long it takes to get that going. Yeah? Again, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Good. With that, I give the word to Astrid, who will introduce our next speaker, Jillian.
Oh, so our next speaker is Jill. And so Jillian is our Global Health Services Head of Johnson & Johnson. Okay, Marco will share. Perfect, the slide. So you'll see the introduction. You certainly have seen it already on LinkedIn. That beyond the health management, she's very much focused on the mental health and the well-being. It's a balance. It's an interaction. And what I found interesting, Utz, you had on your last slide, right, the responsibility of resilience. And I saw that you spotted the CEO. So that's very similar, like for Jillian, the responsibility of the employer to provide a safe environment. So I see they're very a bridge. And also what I heard from Anna previously, right, when she said anxiety and curiosity doesn't go with each other. So it's either or. And without curiosity, we cannot be successful. So we need to try to avoid the anxiety, and that's all interesting thoughts and going in the direction. And I'm really looking forward to Jillian's presentation, which will be practical oriented. All of us in finance are facing now a very challenging time at the end of the year, right? All the goals and objectives need to be fulfilled. We have year's end close. It's getting the dark part of the year, and we have Corona, so that's adding really a lot of things. And I'm sure that every one of us can take something with us from Jillian to get strengthened and more resilient in the next few months. Jillian, thank you so much for being here, and the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Astrid.
So thank you, Marion. Before we move to the networking, I would like to say a few words about the IMA Switzerland chapter. Our chapter has around 250 plus members, which makes us the third largest IMA chapter in Europe. And I would also say we are quite a diverse group of professional and student members, and also very international. So if you'd like to learn more about our activities, you can visit our chapter website and also follow us on LinkedIn. Last year, for example, we celebrated our 10-year anniversary together with 100 years of IMA. And this year, as almost everyone, we organized a lot of online events and also webinars. And just to have a look ahead for next year, we are already planning a joint event with ACCA on predictive analytics. And we will also have an event at the business school IMD in Lausanne on capital budgeting and real options. So feel free to join us again. One thing to add, as a chapter, part of our mission is not only to organize professional events like today's, but also help new members and students pass the Certified Management Accountant certification. And this is also why this week we just launched a new CMA coaching program to help our Swiss members pass the CMA exam. As you can see, our chapter volunteers will provide various support sessions, the first one starting on November 25. So if you are preparing for the CMA or are interested about the program, you can visit our chapter website and sign up there. It's also a good opportunity, of course, to connect with fellow members and candidates. So with that, I will give the word back to Chris.
Also a little bit of advertisement. So we already talked about the Controller Association a little bit, and I just want to add that we have when we look at Switzerland, so we are in Switzerland more than 500 members, and we have here in Switzerland 3 regional working groups. One of them is the one here in northwestern Switzerland, another one in the Bern region and to the west Swiss area, and one to the east part, so from Zurich and to St. Gallen. We also have our, let me say, Swiss event that was in I think in September this year, once a year, a greater one for all the Swiss controllers. You are also invited to join when you're not a member of the association. And what I especially want to point out is that we have founded a silver professional working group. So that's for controllers that are over 55 years old, really with let me say 2 purposes, like coaching young professionals and also thinking about your next stage in your lifetime. So discuss that together, talking about how that transformation works, what you can do about it. And so I think that's really a great thing to do. I think even I've seen, is he still here? You see Gosenbacher. Here, Rainer. Rainer, I think you are organizing that working group, and he's also here at the session. And so please feel free also to reach out. So I think that's a very special working group that we are offering here in Switzerland. Okay, and so one other tradition. So last but not least, so we're working now for, as you heard, more than a year to organize that event, and unfortunately we could not do it in person. Okay, so that's really okay. It is what it is. I think Who said that? Donald? It is what it is, okay. But so, but I also want to thank Astrid and Marion. So we had really, I have never seen so engaged two ladies to organize that event. So we had so many regular meetings. They really had a clear, let me say, meeting every 2 or 3 weeks, get these things done, organize, set it up, etc. Really fully engaged. And so I want to thank you very much for your time you invested here and into this great event. And I think also so, Marco, I hope I speak for you. We will meet. We will invite Marion and Astrid then to this super nice location there at the Ares here in Solothurn you talked about. And I think we will find some time then to have a little bit of have a glass of beer or whatsoever together. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we are 4 people. It's still in the Corona.
Yeah, it's
fine, and it would be the first time to really meet as a team. So I think it's a good idea.
We should do this as a closure event. So thank you very much to you both for that great event.
I think I speak also for Marion that the pleasure was all ours, right? And so my perception was it was really great this afternoon. Today, the speakers, and just a wonderful experience. So thanks to all of you and also for our participants today joining in, dialing in. Thank you all.
Yes, I would also like to echo that, and just to add that I believe as professionals, we can also really benefit from events like today's, such collaborations. And yeah, maybe we will organize another one soon. So.
Yeah. But one important thing I would say, thank you for being here. It's not over, so we still have the network.